Mm. Hi, Cheyenne. Be with you in just a minute now. Just doing a little sharing. Hi, Cheyenne. AMLO is calling for the release of Julian Assange. That is wonderful. I hope he has some success. Unfortunately, since Jeremy Corbyn did not win, I don't think he'll be very successful. But I'm glad to see him try. I hope he's joined by a number of other heads of state as well. Okay, I'm here. Done with my sharing. I'm ready to go. Dolores, hi, how are you? Cheyenne, how are you? I've got five other people here, but I haven't seen them yet. One is probably Bonnie. Dolores has shared. Thank you, Dolores. Bonnie has joined. Hi, honey. And Kay has joined. Hi, Kay. How are you? It's great to see you. Okay, I think we've got a quorum, so let's get started. Tonight I'm going to talk about four things. The first thing is making up. I don't know if we can make up, but we can talk about it. Then there is law breaking by the president. One other agency weighs in on that score. And I want to talk about inequality as life and death. And finally, there's new Medicare for All news that I wanted to share with you. I've linked to a number of articles on these subjects. I'll be pulling up the articles. I won't be reading them. I promise I'll resist temptation. I might read a quote or two, but I won't be reading the articles. Hey, Russell, great to see you. It's great to see you. So let's get started. Let's get started with making up. Here is a fairly typical article which appeared today. And this one is from Common Dreams. It was written by John Quealy, or maybe he pronounces it as Kelly. Probably does. And he's a staff writer for Common Dreams. And the title of it is some of the progressive groups urge Sanders Warren by unity to defeat corporate Democrats in primary. And then Donald Trump. Okay, so let's think about what this might mean. It could mean that Sanders and Warren meet and they promise that they're not going to personally attack each other. Okay, but of course, if they do that, that doesn't mean that their campaigns are not going to have a war. It's hard for the heads of these campaigns to completely control what their campaign workers do. They can certainly try, but if we expect that things are going to be perfection, I think that's unrealistic. I don't think, it's going to happen. As the race gets hotter, if it does get hotter between the two candidates, or if one candidate continues to fall and her status in the race seems to be totally threatened, then we can look for more desperation tactics from the campaign workers who've been working so hard to get her ahead in the primaries. So they can argue till the cows come home that the beneficiaries of their fighting are going to be the establishment Democrats. But in the end, the two are running in the primary. They're in the middle of a contest. And one is either second or first, depending on how you look at it. And the other is still, it appears, in third place, but fairly distantly back in some of the polls from the other one. Now, the third person involved in the top three, of course, is Joe Biden. And we also have a situation where Senator Warren, since it doesn't look like she's going to become the top dog again in the campaign, or get really close to that, she can't be blamed, I think, for looking to perhaps creating a situation where one or both of them consider her for the vice presidency if they do get the nomination. But for the presidency, this is only natural that she might want to be the vice president, that she might be angling for that. And I think people can talk all they want about, for the sake of humanity and the planet, we need a tactical, we need to have a tactical alliance between the two campaigns. But at the same time, if the two are involved in a zero sum game, which to some extent they are, I think it's going to be very, very hard to maintain such an alliance. Now, when you consider that we live in a different world now, it's not simply the leaders of the campaigns, the people running, and then the people at the first level, okay, of leadership, and then the people who are doing the campaign work themselves. It's not just all these people who are involved in the campaign. Both of these campaigns are trying to build a mass movement of some sort. The Bernie campaign, thus far, appears to be much more successful in building such a movement. But Warren's campaign is also trying to build a movement. Now, when you try to build a movement, of course, the farther you get from the center of the campaigns, the more you get to people who are on the periphery of the movement, who may want to be a part of the movement and who want to do a variety of things to help the movement, but don't see themselves as part of a disciplined army the mass of which are going to take orders from the people above. After all, in the end, this is not an army, and no candidate can create an army because it doesn't have the sanction and capability of the military. People who are volunteers can be very dedicated, but at the same time, they're all going to have their own ideas about how to help a movement, how to help a campaign. And now we have social media. And the active people are involved in social media. And in social media, people are making hostile statements. They're making hostile statements about all the candidates. And the people participating in social media have to be free to make those hostile statements. I mean, after all, it is a free speech movement of a sort, isn't it? So, we're all in favor of the candidates we prefer. And campaigns want to generate the necessary enthusiasm to back the candidates we prefer. The more enthusiastic we are about the candidates, the more we want to see the candidates win, and the less we like to see candidates getting attacked, especially if there are personal attacks. When you add in the fact that we're not only dealing with the Warren partisans, we're not only dealing with the Sanders partisans, but we're dealing with third parties who want to see Warren partisans and Sanders partisans tear each other apart. And the only such parties are not the media, the mainstream media. They're also the partisans of other campaigns who are participating in social media. And I believe there are still some 15 candidates that are present in the race that have not entirely dropped out, at this point. And there are probably partisans of some of the candidates who are sitting at 1% or 2% or 3% who might be pretty bitter at some of the other candidates that are doing well. And they may decide they want to have a little fun by trolling. And then there's the fact that some of the people from the major campaigns may also want to troll, just as tactics they can use against the people who are leading. And then there are even campaigns that might deliberately employ trolls to rev up conflicts, okay, among the campaigns. And then there are campaigns from the other party that might want to employ hundreds of trolls to create fights among the Democratic partisans. So, in that environment, how are we going to kiss and make up? And how are we going to make it stick? And why ought we to do so? This is, after all, a contest. Now, Bernie's campaign has always tried to play things above board. It has always tried to be civil to people from the other campaigns and talk about the issues and talk about the content and try not to be distracted by false issues. But since Sanders and Warren are both competing for the support of the progressive movement, then it's naturally going to be the case that from time to time, some people in that movement are going to go off the reservation of civility and try to create an issue where there is none. They may try to create a Trojan horse. They may try to create a distraction. Especially when one campaign is doing well and the other campaign is going the other way, then the second campaign may want to try to slow down or destroy the momentum of the first campaign by creating a distraction. Now, we know it is a fact that the Warren campaign hired many Clinton and Obama staffers. We also know that back in 2016, the staffers for Clinton, as well as people who previously worked for the Obama administration, were very much into identity politics. And they trolled Sanders supporters very, very seriously, very severely during that campaign, using identity politics trolling against the partisans, of Bernie Sanders. And this was a very unpleasant situation for many of the Bernie Sanders people who were fresh into politics and who felt very, very victimized by getting this kind of treatment by people who were supposedly fellow progressives and people who were fellow Democrats. We saw lots and lots of this of 2016. And the more that Elizabeth Warren gets into identity politics and gets away from the class issues and gets away from Green New Deal issues and gets away from corruption issues in corporations and gets away from foreign policy issues and starts to gin up the identity politics advantage she thinks she has over other participants in the race. And the more she does that, the more her people are going to use that as a contrast against Bernie Sanders. Sometimes it will seem like it's a contrast, seem like it's an attack, when it's not even an open attack. So what ought the Sanders people to do? It seems to me what the Sanders people ought to do is to go on with their substantive campaign, consistently and soberly, drawing contrasts with all of the candidates, but especially with Senator Warren and Joe Biden. There are contrasts. They are real. I don't think Bernie should go soft on these particular contrasts. I've noticed his campaigns are now starting to draw the contrasts in rather lengthy infomercials and in ads and in programs on Bernie Media. I think they're doing a good job of drawing these contrasts now. And it would be good for Bernie in his speeches to continue to draw contrasts to Warren, okay, and to Joe Biden. So what if Bernie gets attacked again as a sexist? Well, he gave perfectly good answers to such an attack. So he should openly and calmly give those particular answers again. And the women in his campaign are the ones in higher positions, okay, and the women throughout his campaign should feel confident about replying to the attacks with the facts, okay, of his record and with his own statements, which have been very supportive of women forever now. Just let the record come out and repeat it and repeat it, okay, and repeat it and keep on repeating it. The mainstream media will do its worst. The competitive campaigns will do their worst. There's no question about it. But at the same time, Bernie has, a very powerful campaign and a very powerful movement and very powerful alternative media now. And those media resources can counter the mainstream and will counter the mainstream. But at the same time, as we employ part of our resources to counter these kinds of disingenuous attacks on Bernie, we also have to look at, well, not simply look at, but we also have to pursue very, very vigorously the issue differences among the candidates. When it comes to issues, when it comes to content, when it comes to agenda, when it comes to platform, the outstanding candidate is Bernie Sanders. The most popular candidate is Bernie Sanders. So we have to constantly push that to the fore. So we have to answer the attacks. We have to spend resources on that. We have to have essentially war rooms or something similar to answer those attacks. But we also have to keep on hammering on the issues and how the Sanders campaign is us. It's not me. It's us. That is the big advantage of Bernie's campaign. That's what Warren doesn't have. That's what Biden doesn't have. That is what nobody else has. That the campaign is us. The more Bernie relies on us, the more the distracting charges will fall on deaf ears, and the more the campaign will grow. Our job is to grow that campaign, get more and more people in, and do it on a person-to-person basis, on a face-to-face basis. And we can't let the tactics of any other campaign actually divert us. Now, there's been quite a bit of talk today about being done with Warren, or trusting Warren, or making up with Warren, or how can we make up with Warren? I think this kind of talk is misconceived. We have plenty of examples there are plenty of examples where Senator Warren has dissembled, has distorted the truth, has lied to her advantage in a variety of situations. That is a pattern in her life. In Current Affairs, there's an article by Nathan Robinson that actually catalogs all of the situations in which she has not been entirely honest with her public. The latest incident with Bernie Sanders is only one such incident. So that's her pattern. We have to expect that. We have to live with it. We have to adjust to it. That is going to be there. I think it's going to permanently be there. So, what we need to do is to deal with her in the same way we deal with the other candidates, which is to say, we don't expect any treatment from the other candidates with kid gloves. We don't expect them to be particularly friendly. We expect them to employ whatever tricks they're going to employ against the Sanders campaign. After all, they're all establishment candidates. And the establishment will pull anything to defeat Bernie Sanders. We've been aware of this from the start of this campaign. So Senator Warren is just another candidate competing for voters. She's different from some of the other candidates because she's been able to persuade some of the progressive people, okay, and the progressive the primary voters that she's a progressive, maybe not quite as much, okay, as Bernie is, but in that respect, the second best in the campaign. And for a variety of reasons, they're happy enough with the second best. That situation is probably going to continue. But maybe in light of what she's done, it will continue at a lower rate. I expect that's going to be the case. And I hope that's going to be the case. Okay, but in the end, what it comes down to is that we have to win a primary campaign. And we have to win it on the issues. We have to win it on the policies. We have to win it on our agenda for the future. We have to win it based on us. That is what we have to do. It is no different whether Warren is involved than it is with Joe Biden or Amy Klobuchar, okay, or Mayor Pete or Tom Steyer, okay, or Michael Bloomberg. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Our job is still the same. It's to meet the dirty tricks with the policy issues and overcome them by talking policy and by talking the importance of honesty and authenticity in politics and the importance of people to people politics fueled only by the grassroots. I think that's the way to overcome this. That's the way to de-escalate the tensions, okay, and the hostility. And I think that's also the way to win the contest. So, now let's go to the second subject, which is there is another government agency, one that comes under the authority of the Congress, called the General Accounting Office. And the General Accounting Office says that the White House broke the law by freezing aid to the Ukraine. And they cite a specific law, the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which was originally passed following the behavior and the activities of the Nixon administration. It was passed specifically to control presidents and to make sure that presidents would spend the federal funds that were appropriated by the Congress in the manner dictated by the Congress. So the GAO General Counsel Thomas H. Armstrong said in a statement, OMB told the GAO that it withheld the funds to ensure that they were not spent in a manner that could conflict with the president's foreign policy. And the GAO report declared, withholding funds for a policy reason is not permitted under the Impoundment Control Act, ICA. Therefore, we conclude that the Office of Management, Pay and Budget, which is part of the presidency, in other words, part of the executive branch of government under the authority of the president, that they violated the Impoundment Control Act. Since Trump was responsible for the actions of the OMB, and since the OMB was under his orders, then we have to say that Trump and his administration broke the law. They violated the ICA, the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. So, there is unmistakable evidence that he broke a very important law underlying the separation of powers. So, he committed a crime, clearly and unambiguously. He broke the law. And Sean Eldridge, founder and president of the grassroots advocacy group Stand Up America, called the GAO's decision, quote, undeniable evidence that Donald Trump violated the federal law in his quest to pressure Ukraine to bolster his the re-election campaign. Sean Eldridge goes on and says, quote, this should be a call to action for every senator to put country over party and vote to remove Trump from his office, Sean Eldridge said in a statement on Thursday. And he specifically targeted the Republican Party and asked, quote, will the self-proclaimed party of law and order continue ignoring the fact that Donald Trump committed a crime, or will they uphold the rule of law and their oath of office by voting to convict the criminal in the White House? History is watching, and voters are watching what senators like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and Mitt Romney do next. And then you had more statements of this sort. Now, what Congress will do with this latest bit of evidence, I don't know. I don't know whether Nancy Pelosi will do a separate article of impeachment to cover this, or whether they'll figure it that it comes under the abuse of power clause and they'll submit it to the Senate as further evidence to bolster what they've already sent over. So we'll have to see what's going to happen, but this is extremely clear evidence. GAO historically has not been a partisan organization. It's been an organization that's been above party politics, very well insulated from it. It's an organization that's not well known to the public, but it's highly respected, okay, in Washington, highly respected in Congress, in both the House and the Senate. And the question is, what will the Republicans do now? So next, inequality is a matter of life, okay, and death. A study appeared, and this also was covered by Common Dreams, January 15th, in an article by Jessica Corbett. And there's a nice photo here of two happy people drinking some wine. We have no idea whether it's a good wine or not, but they are well-dressed people. And they look like they're having a good time. It look like they've got either some grapes or some olives on the table. Who cares whether it's grapes, okay, or it's olives? It is a white wine. Sorry. What I'm trying to do now is to get this into clearly for you so you can see it better. There was a new study. It was a transatlantic study on healthy life expectancy. It was published on Wednesday, the 15th, in the Journal of Gerontology, based on data from more than 25,000 adults. 10,754 in the UK and 14,803 in the US, aged 50, okay, and older. And the data came from two studies. One is the English Longitudinal Study of Aging, ELSA, and from the U.S. Health and Retirement Study, HRS. What the study showed, to boil it down, is that for people hitting the age of 50, specifically they found that from the age 50, the wealthiest of British, okay, and American men, and this was constant across both countries, lived 31 more healthy years. In other words, until they were 81, they were healthy, compared with 22 to 23 years for the poorest men. And rich women lived about 33 additional healthy years, compared with 24 to 26.6 years for their poor counterparts. So the difference in life expectancy for men was 8 to 9 years. Okay. And for women, it was roughly 33 years. So both the quantity and the quality of years improved based on whether people were rich or poor. So that's what being rich means. It means 8 to 9 years of healthy living. That's the result of extreme degrees of inequality. So poor people and people who are not so rich should note that if they don't fight to get rid of extremes, okay, of inequality, then it appears that it's going to cost them up to 8 to 9 years of healthy living if they live in the United States or in the UK. Now, certainly, much of that kind, okay, of inequality might be reduced in the United States if we were to get, okay, a Medicare for All program of the kind that Bernie Sanders wants to pass. So let's talk about that next. There's been, okay, an analysis of 30 years of single payer research. It shows, okay, that Medicare for All would absolutely save the U.S. money. The article, not the study, but the article about it was written by Owen Higgins, a staff writer for Common Dreams, and this was published on January 15th. So let's put this one into clearly, okay, as well. Okay, this is what they call a meta-analysis. In other words, it was a review of the literature, and specifically, it reviewed nearly three decades of existing analyses showing the implementation of a single-payer healthcare system, such as Medicare for All, and it showed that having such a system could dramatically reduce costs in the United States, with savings likely experienced in the first year and definitely over the longer term. The meta-analysis was published in the PLOS Medicine Journal, and it reviewed 22 existing studies of state and national single-payer health care proposals. Of the 22 studies that were covered, 19 of them, or 86%, showed that healthcare costs would be reduced in the first year. All of them, all 22, showed that there would be savings within a decade. And it goes through some of the things the study was able to show. Points out the study concludes with a call to implement the systems, saying that, quote, the logical next step is real-world experimentation. It points out as well, the article does, that at a primary debate on Tuesday night, the moderators continually asked Sanders and other Democrats about the cost of such a policy. According to the study's researchers, however, cost should be the least concerning aspect of moving towards Medicare for all. Quote, even though they start with a single designs and modeling assumptions, with different single designs, and modeling assumptions, the vast majority of these studies all come to the same conclusion, said James G. Kahn, who's a professor at the University of California, is that San Francisco, the UCSF, Institute for Health Policy Studies. And he said, quote, this suggests that fears that a single-payer system would increase costs are likely misplaced. So that's the takeaway. Fears of increased costs are likely misplaced. So as I said in my last live stream, we can pay for a Medicare for all system the same way we pay for our system now, because it's not going to result in any increased expenses, but will very likely be cheaper than what we have now. These studies say even in the first year and following, getting increasingly cheaper compared to what we have now. So that's the result of this particular meta-analysis. Just another talking point in the quiver of people in favor of a single-payer Medicare for all bill. As you know, I myself actually prefer the House bill, the Jayapal bill. I do not prefer the Sanders bill, because the Sanders bill has a 4-year transition period, to Medicare for all, whereas the Jayapal period has a 2-year transition period. I think the 2-year transition period is much, much better. So with that, I'll turn to your questions, and your comments. So here we go. Russ says, evening, Dr. Joe. Cheyenne says, by the way, I guess I had that comment up and then I missed it, so let me get back. Okay, let me go back to the beginning of the comments and start to cover them all for you. Okay. Rick Maynard's back. Hi, Rick. Nice to see you. Okay, now we're back at the beginning. Kay says, I'll be in and out again trying to catch the rest of the report on Parnas on the Maddow show. Kay says, hope everybody is doing good tonight. I hope I'm doing good. Lana has joined and Rick Maynard has joined. And Kay says, Warren started the whole mess. She needs to go. Yeah, she does need to go, but the way to get her to go is to win the primaries by as large a margin as possible. That will dry up her financial support and get her to go. Let's do our best to get her out of there by March. That will be a good thing. But let's not forget Joe Biden out of there by March as well. I say let the establishment win. Well, I shouldn't say actually let them win, but let them try to win with Amy Klobuchar, okay, or Buttigieg as their candidate. Rick says he just got back from filming. Nice to see you, Rick. Giant says Nico and Convo Couch did a great show together on Liz and Bernie and the nature, okay, of abusive relationships. Yes, I saw that show. Okay, I didn't want to go into that. I consider that kind of analysis at a distance to be very dicey. Uh, the way I handle relationships that appear to be abusive, okay, is to get out of them. I've done that, okay, a number of times in my life. I do not tolerate those kinds, okay, of things. And I hope that Bernie won't either. I think there were some aspects of that sort of thing, okay, in the relationship of Liz, okay, and Bernie. I mean, frankly, the way she acted in 2016, I certainly would have been done with her by then. I mean, she wouldn't have been my friend any longer after refusing to support Bernie in the campaign. I mean, I would have recognized, okay, at that point, look, she's out for herself. She's always going to be out for herself. So that's what I have to expect from her. And from then on, I would have expected that from her. I don't know why Bernie was expecting anything else. Okay, if he was, he appeared to be surprised by her behavior. But during but debates, but he shouldn't have been surprised. In the days before the debates, in the weekend before, the situation was developing. It was there for him to read about. It was clear by then that she must have been involved in this in some way. So, what was he expecting her to do during a debate? Was he expecting her to back off? I mean, she obviously needed to do something to get her campaign by going again. She needed to take Bernie down a peg or take Biden down a peg. So, in a sense, she had the same kind of choice as she had in 2016. She could either decide to take down Hillary Clinton then, or she could have made the choice, which she did make, was to support Clinton and sell out Bernie. And she made her choice then. So why would she make a different choice now? I mean, the only reason why she might have made a different choice is because Bernie's chances to win are probably greater now than they were in 2016. So maybe the risk for her in doing what she's doing, okay, is greater now. But yeah, I hope there's no chance at all that Bernie is going to choose her, okay, for VP. But okay, I worry about it. The reason why, okay, I worry about it is because I remember when John Kennedy went to Lyndon Johnson for his VP in 1960. Nobody thought that would happen. Nobody thought they could possibly be compatible. That was a total surprise, okay, to everybody. Okay, and Reagan went to Bush, of course, okay, in 1980, and that was somewhat unexpected also. Cheyenne says Bernie knows her public record too. He does. Kay says, hey, Steve, good to see you. Steve says, hi, Kay and all. Kay says, Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Had a great interview today with Reverend Barber of the Poor People's Campaign. Yeah, I saw a good part of that. That was a great interview. I think that Barber is really terrific. He's a wonderful speaker. We saw him in person, must have been about 2012 or 2013 here. Uh, okay, the Center for the American the Future, which is supported by the labor unions, a think tank, okay, supported by the labor unions here in Washington, had an event. And the speakers at the event were, listen to this, Larry Cohn, Keith Ellison, Bernie Sanders, Warren, and the last speaker of the day, and by far the most inspiring speaker, was Reverend Barber. He was wonderful. He is probably the best speaker I've heard since the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He is a wonderful speaker, just wonderful. Giant says, sorry to say Bernie has some bad advisors, which is another issue discussed by the Convo Couch and Nico. Yes, I know. I know. It's interesting to hear them talk about the inside of Bernie's campaign and his advisors, which kind of represent his foot in the mainstream, okay, of DC. Evelina has arrived. Hi, Evelina. Cheyenne says, need to watch that. Love him, thanks, Kay. Kay says, Cheyenne, he started in North Carolina when I lived there. And while I'm not at all churchy, this guy is for real. He is for real. Kay says, I used to think she was second best, but not anymore. And Evelina says, it really is Bernie or bust. Absolutely. Yes. It is for me this time. If Bernie does not win this time, we definitely have to crack open the Democratic Party and leave it to die. This has to be the last time They screw us. And Rick said, Gary Houck has joined, and Rick said something that I have to recapture here. Yes. After Gravel, Tulsi, and Warren, but not anymore. And Kay says, I held my nose and voted for Clinton as a vote against the orange idiot, but I'm not doing that at this time at all. No, no more blonde idiots for us. Giant says, I've followed his PPC from the beginning. And she puts up a bunch of mice. I think they're mice with balloons. Gary Houck has joined. Kay says, yes, I have too. He got arrested. Oh, the Poor People's Coalition, the PPC. Kay says, yes, I have too. He got arrested several times, taking over the Capitol building, Kay in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the beginning. North Carolina was a blue state when I moved there in 1995. And they may well become a blue state again, hopefully, but maybe bluer than ever. Let's hope. Cheyenne says her public record over time is atrocious. If you private message me, I can send you the partial list. I started tracking her in 2004. She's been good, okay, at playing, actually playing a progressive, though. Her strongest skill set, yeah, right, is playing at being a progressive. She's neoliberal to the core. Cheyenne says, Bernie, Tulsi, Nina make a great team. Yeah, I think they do. I'm for Bernie, Tulsi, Nina. Cheyenne says, by the way, 4 million in donations in 24 hours as a result of the debate, the last debate. Take that. God, if he could only do that every 24 hours. Yeah, Poor People's Campaign, yeah. Yep, that's right. And the JFL bill has only a 2-year transition, no 4-year transition. Kay says we will get better results as the country will actually have a vested interest in making people well instead of keeping you sick. Yes. And George Scheller is here, and he says Reuters poll has Bernie on top at 20% and Biden at 19. Bernie always outperforms polls. Let's not stop pushing though. Is this a Reuters poll, okay, in Iowa, George, or is it a national poll, or is it somewhere else entirely? Kay says I worked in healthcare in the 1970s before it was totally for profit, so I see the difference better than others. Yes, healthcare was nicer then. And Kay says that many people are just ill informed about politics and dumbed down these days. Cheyenne says Bernie has little free time to fully analyze situations, especially since some of his advisors are not doing their job. I'm sure that's true. He needs to bring Nico back. And Randy Hedgebeth has joined. Hi, Randolph. How are you? Kay says he won't choose Warren. Not now, anyway. Let's hope he never forgives her. Cheyenne says Kennedy needed the South. He did. Evelyn asks, Dr. Joe, you heard about breaking new discovery in cancer research, finding a mechanism which causes cancer to spread, metastasis, I think it's called, by Catalonian doctor who's working in New York. No, I hadn't heard about that. We'll check it out after we get off here and see if we can find out what that's about. New discovery that causes cancer to spread. Steve says, but JFK and Johnson were not compatible. Johnson had him killed. Well, I read everything I could get my hands on in those days about that. I went over every theory, of what happened. I was really into that for years. Uh, I never believed that Johnson had a part in that. I think it more likely was the CIA. Anyway, George says, but Bernie never had Warren in mind. He specifically said it was a younger woman of color as his VP pick. I don't but actually remember that. I remember him saying, that it was going to be a woman. And I think that's as far as he would go. So I don't think he excluded Warren. And Cheyenne says Barber is the best since MLK. Yeah, I think he is. Russ says, I hate to see Bernie lose access to the 1980 to 95, uh, the 1980 to 95, the uppie crowd. But I don't trust her neoliberal establishment leanings at all now. I'd much rather see Nina be that VP pick. Yeah, I love Nina. I'm not yet sure whether I prefer her to Tulsi. Certainly, Bonnie does prefer her to Tulsi. And Kay says, I agree, Joe. I love but I love uh, uh, Barber. And Kay says, yuppies don't give a damn about the poor. And you do get the impression that Warren doesn't give a damn about the poor, don't you? It does seem to come off her sometimes. In Poor People's Campaign, Kay says, I hope that North Carolina goes blue. Love to go back there. I hate Ohio. Laugh out loud. And George Scheller says 25,000 brand new donations for Bernie. I know, that's wonderful, isn't it? Cheyenne says, Steve, the entire deep state involved, MLK, JFK, RFK, maybe even Malcolm X. Yeah, I know, maybe even Malcolm. Could have been Malcolm too. But anyway, certainly but JFK and RFK, and probably MLK too. I agree. Randy says Warren has the kiss of political death now. Alan Scott has joined. Steve says, yes, Cheyenne, maybe some rock stars too. And Cheyenne says, she says something. I'm waiting for my scroll bar to move. Russ says, I need to call it a night. See you soon. Thanks for coming, Russ. I'll see you on Saturday. And Cheyenne says, I heard Bernie say that too, Joe. Okay, a woman of color. So that brings it down to Nina, to maybe Pramila Jayapal, or maybe Rashida Tlaib. But I think probably Rashida, although she's a great one, might be viewed as spending too little time, okay, in Congress. Of course, in Nina's case, she hasn't been to Congress, okay, at all. But still, he's very, very close to Nina politically, okay, in his campaign. And she's been a wonderful defender, okay, of Bernie. Uh, okay, so anyway, Jayapal and also Tulsi, I think, are both very good candidates for this. Though nobody except for myself, okay, has ever mentioned Jayapal. Now, I remember him saying he wants a woman substantially younger than himself, okay, as VP. And Warren is not really that much younger than he is. I think it must be 6 years or something like that. Giant says, Steve, agree. They were thick in Jamaica. And also, they were feared by Marley. Okay, some believe they poisoned him. Poisoning over time causes cancer. Yeah, Bob Marley poisoned. Maybe. I don't know if he was so dangerous uh, as to merit poisoning. Okay, Evelina says, how about Chavez? I don't know. I never heard much about why he died, okay, at an early age. Okay, and Evelina says, I meant the question for Cheyenne. Sorry. Well, that's okay. If I see something here and I know something about it, okay, I might answer it. But we can wait for Cheyenne's answer. Okay, if you have any more comments or questions, please let me know. In the meantime, while I wait for those, Let me remind you to please share, like, and subscribe when the YouTube version of this goes up. Please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. And now back to you guys. Cheyenne says, highly possible. George says, I shared. Thank you, George. I appreciate all the shares that I can get. I'd really like to grow my channel. Kay says, okay, Marley was a peacemaker. I know he was. There was a local band back in North Carolina that played my favorite Marley song for me. Get up, stand up, fight for your rights. I laugh out loud. I remember that song well. I heard it again not too long ago also. It was somewhere, okay, on YouTube. It's really kind of an exciting song. And Cheyenne says the U.S. citizens are in deep denial about deep state politics. Yes, mainstream media will not talk about it and just avoid it like the plague. It's all up to the alternative media to investigate what's going on. Kathy says, Steve says, they have a heart attack bullet that's made of ice, leaves no trace. Kathy says, just recently watched a documentary on Marley. Very interesting. It was a Netflix documentary. Cheyenne says, but Bernie helped to bring Bob to Burlington. I saw Bob then. He did not look well. Now, I never saw him live. And George said, I used to cover half the Marley catalog, but primarily I'm an original songwriter. Oh, talented George. And Lana says Prince's band played that song for the Bernie Ilhan rally. Fantastic. That rally was fantastic. Steve says shared. And George says Cheyenne Tierra. Wow. Kay says I saw that Lana. I saw that Lana. That rally was wonderful fun. Boy, that place was rocking. Oh, Bernie is popular with Ilhan, all right. Okay, anything else? If not, then good night. And I'll see you guys again on Saturday in the 9 o'clock hour. Hopefully, a little closer to 9 o'clock than I made it this evening. Well, I managed to get things up by 9:20. So once again, good night. We'll meet again. I think I know where and when. Kay says Bernie is an old hippie like me. And Lana says, I'm glad that Ilhan aligns with Bernie. Maybe it's the other way around. Bernie aligns with Ilhan. Yep, I think Ilhan's a real Democrat. And I think Bernie's a real Democrat. For me, the only real Democrats are FDR Democrats. I mean, everything FDR has been pretty much a waste. Dolores says, thank you and good night. Thank you for being here, Dolores. Thank you for coming early and staying late. And Lana says, I'm afraid she was going to be a quote, real Democrat, unquote. Lame is Rob. Can you hear the people sing? Sing the song of angry men. Lana says, no, I was afraid she was going to be an establishment hack. Really? You really thought she was going to be an establishment hack? Whoa, whoa. Did she ever talk like an establishment hack? I mean, every time I've seen her talk, she's like, yeah, she and Rashida are fantastic. Hmm. Seems like my picture is frozen. I seem to be moving all right in my software. So I just don't seem to be moving on Facebook at all. Hope you can all hear me okay. Okay, I'm really saying good night now. See you on Saturday night at the 9 o'clock hour. Have a great time tomorrow.